Today's video will help you review price elasticity of supply, which we know as PES. So let's get started. So what is price elasticity of supply? PES measures the responsiveness of quantity supplied to changes in price. So it attempts to measure by how much quantity supplied will change whenever there's a change in price. We know from studying the law of supply that ceteris paribus, as price rises, quantity supplied increases, and as price falls, quantity supplied decreases. So the law of supply tells us the direction in which quantity supply changes when price changes. PES, price elasticity of supply, on the other hand, measures by how much. So what is the formula for price elasticity of supply? It is calculated by dividing the percentage change in quantity supplied, dividing that by the percentage change in price. So QS2 minus QS1 divided by QS1 times 100, that's the numerator at the top, divided by P2 minus P1 divided by P1 times 100, and that's this will help you calculate the value of price elasticity of supply. It will be a positive value because the relationship between price and quantity supplied is positive. So let's have a look at the various values of price elasticity of supply. If the percentage change in quantity supplied is greater than the percentage change in price, when you calculate PES, the value will be greater than 1. Here we say that there is relatively price elastic supply or relatively elastic supply. The supply curve will be relatively flat. As you can see here, when price rises from P1 to P2, quantity supplied increases by a much bigger proportion than the rise in price. So here we say supply is relatively price elastic. Quantity supplied is very sensitive to changes in price. If the percentage change in quantity supplied is lower than the percentage change in price, so here quantity supplied is not very sensitive, not very responsive to changes in price. The value of PES will be less than 1. Here we say that supply is relatively inelastic or relatively price inelastic, and the supply curve will be relatively steep. As you can see, when price rises from P1 to P2, the increase in quantity supplied is proportionately smaller. It's a very small increase in quantity supplied proportionate to the change in price. Now, what if the percentage change in quantity supplied is 0? So quantity supplied does not respond at all to changes in price. The price elasticity of supply will be calculated, the value will be 0. Here we say that there's perfectly inelastic supply and the supply curve will be vertical. You can see here, whatever the price, so let's just say price rises from P1 to P2, quantity supplied is fixed. It does not change. There is zero responsiveness. Quantity supplied is not in any way responsive to changes in price. Now, what about the opposite? What if the percentage change in price is 0? When you calculate PES, the value will turn out to be infinity because anything divided by 0 is infinite. Supply here is said to be perfectly elastic and the supply curve will be horizontal, a horizontal supply curve where the price is fixed regardless of the quantity supplied. Okay, so you can move from Q1 to Q2, Q3, and the price is fixed, it doesn't change. Here we say this is perfectly elastic supply. Now, another situation that could happen, what if the percentage change in quantity supplied is exactly equal to the percentage change in price? So say price rises by 10% and quantity supplied increases by 10%. The value of PES will be equal to 1. Here we say that there's unit elastic supply or unitary PES. Any supply curve that begins from the origin will have a PES equal to 1. So any supply curve that begins at the origin here, this point there, will have unitary elastic. It doesn't matter how steep or flat it is, but any supply curve that begins or originates from the origin will have a unitary elastic supply, a PES equal to 1. So what are the determinants of price elasticity of supply? There are 5. There's period of time, there's mobility of the factors of production, There's unused capacity, there's the ability to store, and there's the rate at which costs increase. Let's begin by explaining the first one, so the time period involved. Generally, in the short run, supply will be relatively inelastic, and in the long run, it will be relatively more elastic. And this is because producers need time to adjust their production plans. In the short run, producers may not be able to adjust their production plans to respond to a changing price. But over time, they have more time to adjust their production plans, and hence supply becomes more elastic in the long run. The second determinant is the mobility of the factors of production. If the factors of production are relatively mobile and can be easily moved from the production of one product to another product, for example, supply will tend to be more elastic. But if they're very immobile, if it's not easy to switch factors of production between the production of different goods, supply will be relatively inelastic. So the more mobile the factors of production are, the more elastic supply will be. The third determinant is the level of unused capacity. If the business has some spare capacity, if they have some machines that are unused or not used at full capacity, if they have some workers working part-time that are not working at full capacity, supply will tend to be more elastic because producers can respond to a rise in price by increasing quantity supply. But if the business is operating at full capacity, so all machines are used at full capacity, all workers are worked overtime, even not just full-time, supply will tend to be more inelastic. So the more spare capacity the business or businesses have, or the more spare capacity there is in the economy, the more elastic supply will be in general. But if businesses are operating at full capacity, it might be very difficult to increase quantity supplied if price has risen. So here supply will tend to be more inelastic. The next determinant is the ability to store. If a product is durable and basically can be stored and it doesn't expire or doesn't lose its quality, supply will be more elastic because the producer can just respond to a rise in price by taking some of the products in storage and selling them. If the product is perishable and not durable, so it can expire, like fresh vegetables or meat, and it can't be stored for long periods of time, supply will tend to be more inelastic. If the product is required to be fresh and any long periods of storage affect the quality of the product, then supply will be more inelastic. The last determinant is the rate at which costs increase. Okay, if adjusting quantity supply, if say increasing quantity supply will result in a significant increase in costs, supply will be more inelastic. Okay, if it's not easy for the producer to increase quantity supplied or adjust quantity supplied, and that would involve a lot of investment and very high increase in costs, supply will be more inelastic. If adjusting quantity supplied will only entail a slight increase in costs, so if the producer can, with a very small increase in costs, adjust quantity supplied, increase quantity supplied, supply will be more elastic. I hope this video has helped you review price elasticity of supply, how it's calculated, what are the degrees and determinants of PES. Please contact me if you have any questions.